Eco Radio.
Radical Radio Collective.
Good afternoon, listeners. You're tuned in to 4ZZZ102.1 FM. This is Eco Radio, Australia's longest running peace and environment radio show. And we are taking over your middle of the day, middle of the week, end of the month airwaves.
Indeed.
My name is Dave. My pronouns are he, him.
My name is Zack, and my pronouns are he, they.
And I want to start off by acknowledging and paying my respects to the custodians on the country in which we broadcast. We're located in the city Mangajin on Turrbal, Yagara and Yugambeh land. I also want to acknowledge and pay my respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are listening in today. Our radio waves reach Cubby Cubby and Jinbarra country in the north, Waka Waka country in the west. In the east, we pay respects to the Quandamooka people, and down south we reach the Comrie, the Garragwalma and Jaliwan, Jerrabara, Yugambeh and Bundjalung countries. On today's program, what have we got, Zack?
We are going to be having a chat with Dr Ascelin Gordon, who is a senior lecturer and a research fellow from RMIT University, who is specialising in sustainability and urban planning. He also presented information in a federal inquiry on the environmental impact of artificial intelligence, which is what we will be picking his brains about today.
Yeah, right. That's going to be pretty interesting.
Yeah.
For like us on this show, we're constantly known as the organic stupids.
Are we?
Yeah.
By who?
By me.
Okay.
So to be talking about the environmental impact of artificial intelligence is going to be quite the dichotomy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how much some people from No Idea will appreciate this, because they may or may not be pro artificial intelligence in some aspects.
Yeah, well, Max was using Gemini before.
I heard that.
Oh,
it fits in well, yeah.
But Izzy was also stepping on your turf, talking about snake poo and snake pee.
I don't deal in those.
You don't talk about snakes?
Not pee or poo.
Okay.
That's revolting.
Okay. Gross.
Yeah. Ew.
I'm going to talk about the bird flu later in the show, as you know, Australia is bracing for the migration that may bring bird flu to our bird flu-free continent.
What do you mean?
We don't have the H5N1 bird flu strain in Australia yet.
The bird flu, though, they tend to do that.
Oh, you got me.
Classic.
Well, if you want to keep hearing all of those rizzes and razzes, you can keep your dials tuned to 4ZZZ. This is 50 years in your ears. And to keep the AI idea going, this is a Kraftwerk song called The Model. Zack, you picked this?
I did. It sounds like it would be something that AI would enjoy, or at least it sounds very techno, so seems appropriate.
All right, we'll be back after this. You're listening to 4ZZZ Eco Radio.
Paradigm Shifts podcast is available online and via your favourite podcasting app, challenging the assumptions of our current society to investigate alternative ways of living for a world based on justice, solidarity, and sustainability. Tune in to the Paradigm Shift podcast. Just search The Paradigm Shift, 4ZZZ.
Welcome back. You're on 4ZZZ. This is Eco Radio.
My name is Zack, and on the line with us I have Dr Ascelin Gordon from RMIT University. How are you doing today?
Good, thanks.
So, you're an expert in sustainability and urban planning, and I wanted to discuss with you what the environmental impact of artificial intelligence is. So I think the first place to begin with that is a discussion on what a data center is. And so what is a data center, and how do AI data centers differ in terms of resource requirements?
Sure. So a data center is basically a big building or factory you can think of with usually multiple floors, where each floor is lined with racks of servers, which are basically like powerful computers. So they're rack mounted. And so basically it's a bit of infrastructure set up that can literally host thousands of computers that are sitting mounted in these racks. And those computers can do large amounts of computation. And those computations are what powers all of the cloud services we use, all of the streaming audio, streaming video, all of the email, the document backups in the cloud that all of us use every day. And they're also increasingly being used to run these really powerful generative AI models that are becoming quite widespread in their use as well. And so the main things that data centres, the main impacts that data centres have is that they require large amounts of electricity to power both the all of the servers and the chips within them that do the computation, and also they require large amounts of cooling, and because all of those computers generate a lot of heat, and so the data centre needs to be cooled so it doesn't overheat, and that cooling is often done by evaporative cooling methods, which requires large amounts of water. So they're two of the most commonly spoken about impacts of data centres, which is the electricity use and the water use. And they can differ quite a lot depending on the size of the data centre and where it's located. For example, data centres in very cold areas are going to require less cooling than a data centre in a warmer location as well. So it can be quite specific in terms of the size of the data centre and where it's located as to how big these impacts will be.
Right, so going towards the AI aspect of it then, could you talk about the differences in sort of resource efficiency between those different forms of generative AI, such as text, images, and video?
Yeah, so traditionally people are probably aware that a lot of generative AI started with just text-based queries where you can put in a question and the model generates text as a response. And I mean, one thing to firstly note is when people have now been trying to calculate how much energy and water gets used in doing these different types of queries, and for a whole range of reasons it's quite difficult to calculate. And one of the reasons is that often all of the data isn't available from these commercial companies to actually really get an accurate measure. But the other reason is that it varies a lot as well, depending on where the data centre is located that is doing the computation. But there are estimates that, you know, compared to a traditional Google search, just using a text-based query can use up something like 10 to 90 times more energy than just doing a traditional Google search. But those numbers are sort of changing and generally decreasing as AI gets more and more efficient every year. There's also water used in doing those queries as well. And again, people have tried to estimate how much water gets used for doing like 50 questions or something. And there was one estimate back from 2023 that was sort of estimating that every sort of 50 queries you gave ChatGPT, it would basically use half a litre of water in cooling, which is actually quite a bit when you think about ChatGPT having literally billions of queries every day. But then, you know, we've now had image generation is becoming widespread. And again, it's not, estimates vary, but it's probably something like 20 times more energy per image to generate an image compared to text. But of course, that depends on the resolution of the image and various other things. And then as we move, then the next big frontier is generating video, and there's been sort of big strides in being able to do that this year. And again, I haven't been able to come across any sort of reliable estimates, but I imagine it'll be at least 10 to 100 times more energy intensive and compared to image. So, as we start utilising all of these different aspects of AI, it really is going to impact the energy, the power of the data centres that allow us to AI to do that computation to produce those images and videos.
So could you put into perspective then how much of, I suppose, Australia's how much of Australia's resources are put towards AI within Australia? I'm sure, again, that is something that's, there's a whole bunch of numbers surrounding it rather than anything real conclusive.
That's right. In terms of the actual, so we know there's approximately 230 data centres in Australia. And again, there's even basic things like the exact number of data centres is not exactly recorded as well. You get different estimates from different sources. And currently in Australia, those data centres use about 5% of Australia's electricity, which is a bit more than the sort of global average, which is that data centres use about 3% of the world's electricity over the whole world. But the forecast in Australia is by 2030, that will go up to somewhere between 8 and 15% of Australia's electricity will be going towards data centres. And in terms of, though, the issue is it's a bit more complicated because data centres are used to run AI services, but they're also used to run all of the other cloud-based services as well. So currently, I think globally, the estimate is around 20% of the data centre's computation is being utilised for running AI models, and 80% is being used for all the other things we basically do online. So the short summary is that the amount of energy is significant and growing, and also that 20% is probably going to grow as well in terms of an increasing proportion of data centres will be directed towards running AI as well.
So with that increase in the number of data centres and the amount of resources that fuel those data centres, does the Australian government have any current policies regarding AI efficiency and resource allocation?
Yeah, so there are things like there's various standards. Like one of the most well-known one is one that's called NABERS, which is the National Australian Built Environment Rating System. And so they have like one of these they have a star rating system where you can give star ratings to buildings and you'll say it's a 5-star building for energy efficiency and things like that. So they have a rating system where you can rate data centres in terms of a star rating. The Australian government, so they now have a policy where if they're leasing space in a data centre to run government services, they are only going to do it on data centres that have a 5-star energy rating. So that's a requirement on government use of data centres for both AI and other things. But in terms of, there's no actual formal policy or standard that actually mandates or requires certain levels of data centre efficiency. Some data centres are certainly making an effort to try and be more efficient and using that to sort of promote their green credentials and to increase their market share. So there is growing awareness of this issue, but there's no requirement. But also, I guess the other thing to note is there's the energy efficiency of the data centre, and that can include, the servers that are running in the data centre, but then there's also the efficiency of the AI model itself, and that can also vary hugely as well. So, for example, a model like ChatGPT, which can answer basically any query on anything, is much more intensive to run than a smaller model that is specifically trained and designed to answer questions within a very sort of specific domain as well. So different types of AI models can vastly affect the energy use and efficiency of data centres as well.
So is it there the potential then for things like drought or other natural conditions, say that I know in South Africa there's a lot of power issues at the moment. Is there the chance that AI can potentially exacerbate the effects of those?
Yeah, so I think Well, first we've got to clarify it's the data centres that are going to cause the big problems, and then, and the growth in data centres is partially being fueled by AI, but only some proportion of the data centre use is going to AI. They're also going to all of the other online services we're doing. But, there are definitely concerns that the use of water and energy is going to have significant impacts. So, coming back to Australia, there was an article in the ABC earlier this year where they did an FOI for Greater Western Water on the west of Melbourne, where they discovered there were 19 data centre applications which were applying to collectively use up to 20 gigalitres of water per year. And to put it in perspective, that's roughly the same amount of water that 330,000. So basically, these 20 data centres was the equivalent of 330,000 houses' water use. And the concern was that, that may be constraining the actual water supply for new houses that are going in, and may also be driving up the price of water for everyone, which is something that's not really being factored in. And I guess the same could also apply for energy, with huge amounts of energy use for these data centres. If it's just coming from the grid, it could also potentially increase the price of energy for everyone. But there's also cases all around the world where data centres have been proposed and, maybe their water has been planned to be extracted from the ground, reducing the water table. And so in cases like that can have ongoing effects, affecting the environment, affecting the capacity for farmers to draw water from the water table and the groundwater, and that might have impacts on river systems and things like that. So there's definitely, examples where these data centres are exacerbating existing issues with water scarcity and things like that.
So we've talked a lot about the negatives of the data center impact on the environment, but how can AI assist in developing some of those environmentally beneficial solutions, or can it even do so?
Yes, well, definitely AI can. And the first thing to clarify is when we say AI, we don't just mean one thing. There's what listeners may be most familiar with is the generative AI now, which is things like ChatGPT or Google's Gemini, where you can put in queries and generate images and text. But AI is also a whole lot of other processes for things like what are called machine learning and optimization. And so there are a whole lot of sort of statistical and mathematical tools for doing all sorts of optimization and analysing various complex problems to make them more efficient. And so this whole suite of sort of approaches that comprise AI collectively are used a lot in science, and they can do all sorts of things like support modelling to generate better drugs and treatments. They can be utilised for things like improved climate modelling and predicting extreme weather and, detecting deforestation in satellite imagery and things like that. So there's also one of the examples that you hear touted a lot when you look around the media about this topic is that AI is really good at optimizing like computing resource and energy use and optimizing the grid to make like electricity grids more efficient and use less electricity. And so all those sorts of things. So they're a really diverse range of benefits that might benefit the environment and improve things and maybe improve human health. And then I guess the question of how does that trade off with the negatives, which we've spoken about. And it's a little bit difficult to compare in that you're comparing, one type of benefit that's completely different from another type of negative. But I guess one useful perspective on that is that when you look at most of the AI use is just on things like generating images and people playing around, chatting, and maybe using it for work to help them, summarize a document or draft an email, and it's only a very small proportion of AI that is actually being utilised for these purposes of, trying to improve efficiency and, undertake research to be able to make better predictions of climate change and things like that. And so if, the majority of AI use was put to these uses, it would probably mean that, you could maybe mount an argument that the benefits are outweighing the costs or the negatives. But when you think about the fact that only a tiny proportion of AI use is going to trying to improve these things, and most of it is being used for other ways, I think you can mount a strong argument that in general the costs aren't going to outweigh the benefits.
So this pertains to generative AI once again, but I think there's an idea with AI that it is completely impartial. However, there are biases that are programmed into it, so it all depends on the programmers on the AI at the end of the day. So are there biases present in that generative AI programming and responses to environmental concerns?
Yeah, so often the biases present in AI are often mostly driven by the biases in the data that the AI is trained on. And then usually there's some sort of human reinforcement process in sort of refining the AI outputs, but the majority of the biases come from the data that the AI is trained on, and that data is usually data from the internet. So it'll be things like news articles, it'll be things like blogs, it'll be things like Wikipedia, it'll be things like Reddit, and lots of things where people are just putting up information. And so whatever people tend to be focusing on and talking about mostly will then often be reflected in the types of biases that the AI shows when it makes responses. And so in terms of biases regarding environmental concerns, if you look at all of the material on the internet, there's often a really high level of emphasis on, what individuals can do to save the environment. Things like, make sure you recycle more, don't use plastic straws, drive less, change to energy efficient products and those sorts of things. But what's often under-emphasised or, spoken about are the systemic drivers that are really driving all these environmental problems. And so these are things like, government policy and corporate responses to certain types of situations, or the fact that, energy infrastructure is really outdated and inefficient and the government hasn't updated it for 20 years and those sorts of things. And so they can be the really big, important things that need to be changed to really make a significant difference. And yet it's very easy just to focus on what you can do as an individual, because those big systemic things are really hard to change, whereas you can drive less, consume less, buy energy efficient things easily yourself, and those are good things to do. But so it's not a one or the other. We need to do those things individually, and we need to look at making these systemic changes. But that bias of focusing on the individual level is often present in AI's training data, which means that it can also come out in the sorts of responses that AI get as well, that AI provides as well. And so in some ways you could think that the AI outputs may be actually reinforcing those biases as well, that it's just all up to the individual to, save the environment. when that's only one small part of it. And the other thing that I think sometimes might happen is that a lot of AI training will be done on news sources, and especially recently, there's a big focus on the really high-emitting countries like China and India when talking about sort of global warming and greenhouse gases and things. And so they can be overrepresented in the AI training data, and facts like the point that, the US and Europe, even though their emissions may not be as high now and are sort of either peaking or, particularly for many European countries, starting to decline per capita, they still resulted in a really significant proportion of carbon emissions that are cumulatively built up in the atmosphere. And so that can also mean that the AI biases can come out, can sort of obscure that fact and just focus particularly on, for example, China and India and big emitters like that, and to some extent underemphasize the impact that the Western nations have had on climate change too. So, yeah, they would be the biggest biases that come to mind in the environmental domain. But I think, it's just really important for people to be aware that these AI responses, even though they can sound authoritative and definitive, often are only telling a one-sided story. But in general, they can also be cases where they are actually pretty good, and it can be hard to tell the cases where it is definitely biased versus it is giving a comprehensive, unbiased answer. But I guess it's important for people just to be aware that these responses can be biased, and just to keep that in mind.
What would you like to see happen in terms of reducing the environmental impacts of data centres and AI?
Yeah, so, the first thing is for people to just be aware that everything they do online has an impact. Like, it's easy to forget when you just stream some music on your phone that's actually resulting in some computer whirring away in a data center using electricity and water. And every time you do a query on a generative AI service, it's the same thing. And if you generate a video, it's much more energy and water that's being used up. And so the first thing is to be aware that that's happening. And so, again, there's that thing, we've got individual responsibility. We can change what we do individually, how much we use AI, only use it when it's going to be really useful, and try and reduce our sort of just flippant use of AI. But I guess the other thing is looking at, the government policy systemic responses as well. So one thing would be, like we spoke about earlier in the interview, mandating sustainability standards and environmental impact standards for data centres. I would also be great to see things like some sort of energy star rating for AI services, where they could actually, as a user, you could go on and see what's roughly the range of energy or water use that would be associated with doing a query, or, they talk about it, tokens, the number of terms that's going into your query, so that you as a user could choose to use services that are more efficient if you wanted to. But I feel like that's probably a long way off, but it would be helpful, and then that would mean for various AI companies it would become quite clear if some were having much greater environmental impacts than others, and I think consumers would certainly, at least some proportion of them, might take that into account when choosing what to do. And the final thing is just for governments to mandate transparent reporting of things like water and energy use for data centres, because at the moment, some of the big tech companies will report some of these things, but there's no absolute requirement for everyone to do it. And I think as a starting point, a really urgent thing is just to actually require this reporting, so we can actually get a current handle on what is the full energy and water use going on now, so that we can then understand really accurately the extent to which it's growing, or whether that growth is declining because of efficiency gains and things like that.
Thanks so much for joining us today. How can people find out more about your work or support your research?
Yeah, sure. So I have a website which is my first name, Ascelin, Ascelin. So it's ascelin.github.io. So people can go there to have a look. You can also follow me on LinkedIn. Because of my unusual name, I should be fairly easy to find if you just search for Ascelin. And it's easy to find my email address there too, so I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone is curious about anything I've mentioned and wants to contact me about it.
Again, thank you so much for joining us today. Up next, Dave, who are we going to be playing?
We've got Charlotte Mead with Still Life. You're listening to 4ZZZ. This is Eco Radio.
Have you been loitering around like a juvenile delinquent? Are you lacking purpose in your life? Subscribe to 4ZZZ and get some warm inner glow.
I want to talk a bit about birds. You want to hear about birds, Zack?
Yeah.
All right. So the bird flu, which
I sure did.
Yes. Okay.
I'm doing it again.
Yeah, okay. Researchers are worried that the bird flu has reached the Australian territory and is now killing seals on Heard Island.
Whack. That's not a bird.
No, it's not a bird. Yeah, it jumps species. It's actually really terrifying. Scientists have collected samples from an unusually high rate of dead elephant seals on Heard Island. This is about 4,000 kilometres southwest of Australia's coast, so it's still quite a fair way away. This is concerning because the spread of bird flu was expected to come to Australia from the north with migratory birds, but the Antarctic rates of the influenza could make its way to Australia from the south. The Scientific Committee on Antarctic Research detected the virus in the region in 2023 after its jump from South America, spread by scavenging birds. The Tasmanian government says authorities are preparing for the expected arrival of the virus, with a major public information campaign already up and running. Bird flu, or more specifically the H5N1 strain of avian influenza, was first detected in 1997 in Hong Kong before spreading across the world in 2003. The H5N1 strain has not been reported in Australia. We are the only continent free of this flu, which can decimate bird and other animal populations. In eastern Germany, over 1,000 cranes were found dead, infected with the virus in just a few days. In America, bird flu has killed geese, waterfowl, and a black bear.
Whoa!
Yeah. And around the world, it has been found in dogs, cats, cows, goats, tigers, and leopards.
Interesting.
And it's also killed a polar bear. However, a lot of the reporting has been focused on agriculture, poultry farming, and the potential spread through human populations, including one person who has died in the US. But there is no risk of human-to-human spread at the moment. That is not what people are worried about. Over 500,000 hens, ducks, geese and turkeys have been culled in Germany since the start of September, as a virulent strain of bird flu sweeps their country. Australia has been preparing for an incursion of the H5 bird flu for years. There's a $95 million suite of biosecurity, environmental and public health funding that was announced in October. The Department of Environment is warning people to keep their pets away from wild birds and to report to the Emergency Animal Disease Hotline if you see a group of sick or dead wildlife. That's any wildlife, a group of them. Authorities were expecting to see the bird flu appear in spring with the migratory birds from Russia and America. This includes at Toondah Harbour with the Welcome Back Shorebirds campaign. They were expecting, the bar-tailed godwit to bring bird flu with them. But that hasn't eventuated. My theory is that the birds were too sick to make the trip.
Maybe.
As soon as I get the flu or any type of cold, I'm not moving anywhere.
Yeah.
I'm not going. Whatever it is, I'm not going. So maybe the birds did that. However, I don't think that's a very good theory, considering that migratory birds had to travel 1,600 kilometres to get to the Antarctic in the first place. If bird flu does show up on our shores, the species most likely to be susceptible to the virus are animals that live in groups, animals living around water, and scavenger species. Because Australian animals are isolated from the virus, they are also more susceptible. New Zealand has been vaccinating vulnerable birds, species like the Coorparoo.
That's fun.
Which is a trial. They're not sure of its effectiveness. But
you don't want to find out if it's effective or not.
Yeah, but it's one of their things that they're preparing for. This is also a problem if you've got bird feeders.
Okay.
So where there's outbreaks in America, they're telling people to take down your bird feeders. You don't want an area where birds will congregate a lot. So that includes like feeding birds in a park.
Right.
Because they mainly stay away from each other.
Yeah.
But if you're feeding them, they all come together to get that feed. So, you don't want to feed the birds in the park. You don't want bird feeders. Anywhere where birds of different species, different flocks will come together is how the bird flu will spread. And if you are looking to see something devastating, look at some of the pictures from Heard Island of the elephant seals.
It's pretty brutal.
It's really confronting. Massive mortality rates there of these giant seals.
It's been a real rough year for the Heard Islands as well.
Has it?
Yeah, so they had this happen, and then this has happened now, but earlier in the year, Donald Trump imposed a 10% tariff on them, despite the fact that no one lives there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
brutal.
Well, I mean, that can't be helping.
No. They're not able to export as many things to get money to protect themselves in the bird flu.
Yeah,
is effectively
they can't get any of those vaccinations.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, they've done it again, the Americans. And that's all my bird flu news. So just to summarise, it's not in Australia.
It technically is, but it's not.
Well, it's been brought over, things have been brought over that were infected, but it hasn't been brought over by wild
gotcha.
Species, and it hasn't spread.
Yeah.
So technically it is, but it's not. Anyways, all right, you're on 4ZZZ. This is Eco Radio. We're going to do a Bushcare Roundup speed round. You ready?
Yes.
It's a Bushcare Roundup. They've been pulling out weeds, and then they put in trees. It's the Bushcare Roundup.
That one was normal speed, but this isn't. Saturday the 1st at 7 o'clock, you can go to the Crosby Road Bushcare Working Bee. That's in Ascot. At 8 o'clock, you can go to the Glindemann Park Bushcare Working Bee. That's in Holland Park. At 8:30, you can go to the Bowies Flat Bushcare Working Bee. That's in Coorparoo. And at 8:30 as well, you can go to the Mother of Millions Bushcare Workshop. That's at Chapel Hill.
On Saturday the 2nd from 7 till 9. No, that's too quick.
That's too quick.
From 7 till 9. You've got the Tall Tree Circuit Park Bushcare in Wakerley from 7 till 9:30. There is the Ansted Bushland Reserve Bushcare. That one in Ansted from 8 till 10. There's a Gold Coast Community Beach Cleans for Conservation down in Palm Beach. And then from 3 till 5 p.m. there is the Extraordinary Kookaburra Bushcare in Tarragindi.
All right, and that's everything we've got for your Eco Radio today. we're going to send you off to the coolest cat on radio, Jordan, with Sonic Aliens. Zack, you're going to love this.
Yeah.
Jordan is going to be talking to King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard today.
Oh, that's so exciting! Can you ask him about the meaning behind? I'm talking to Jordan through the thing at the moment.
Through the power of radio.
Yeah. Can you ask him about what the inspiration from the hit song Rattlesnake was? What inspired them to make it? Yeah.
All right. So if you're as keen as Zack to continue on with your wonderful radio, then stay tuned to 4ZZZ 102.1 FM, or you can listen back on the podcast. We're on podcasts or on the website. If you want to become a 4ZZZ subscriber because you love everything that we do, you can go to 4zzz.org.au/support and become a subscriber for as little as $25. All right, let's send you over to Jordan now. You're listening to 4ZZZ Eco Radio.
4ZZZ's Radio Reversal has gone digital. Since 2012, the collective have been building a record of radio theorising, organising, mistake-making, rethinking and community building that happens across this city. So, if 1 hour a week isn't enough for you, head to radioreversal.substack.com to learn more about the Radio Reversal podcast, or listen to the full episodes via your favourite podcasting app.